Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for all the people who serve our city, working outside, dealing with the cold and the snow. Lord, keep them safe and give them grace and strength. And I thank you too for our council members, our mayor, the administration, city staff, for their efforts, their skill, their service to our city. As the council works through challenging business, I pray that you'd give them wisdom, help them to have clear and healthy communication, guide them towards what is true, and will provide what is beneficial for the citizens of Fergus Falls. Pray that you'd give our council a sense of perspective so they can operate in keeping with broad principles, purposes as they make decisions. Father, we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call this City Council meeting on February 3rd to order. Could we do a roll call, please?
Rachel.
Here.
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 Joe.
Here.
Kwame.
Here.
Clayton.
Yes.
Kramer.
Here.
Mortensen.
Here.
We have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is open forum, whereby anybody in the audience can speak on a matter that's not already on the agenda. At that time, they would have opportunity to speak on an agenda item. As nobody wishes to step forward, we can move on to the approval of the agenda. We have an addition of a resolution regarding support for grant funding on Lake Alice water quality to come under old business, and then Council Member Kwame has asked that item number 4 off the consent agenda be removed and talked about separately. With that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Laurel.
Second.
Seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. The first item on the agenda is public hearing regarding housing tax rebate program for 2103 Wyrens Road and 803 East Mount Faith Avenue, and I will call upon Clara Beck.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I know I've been saying this the last several times. We've had tax rebate applications in front of us, but these really are the last two. They snuck in right under the deadline of December 31st, so we are still going to hear them and make a decision regarding whether or not these two properties receive $5,000 worth of tax rebates over 5 years or $5,000, whichever comes first. The first home that you're considering is going to be built at 2103 Wyrens Road. That is valued at $400,000, and that will be a home that the people who are building it are going to live in. The second home is 803 East Mount Faith. That is a $350,000 valuation, and that home will be built in order to be sold to a family to live in. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Does anybody have any questions for Clara? If not, we require 2 separate resolutions. Oh, sorry. Okay, we will open it to public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Legal Man. Anybody wish to come forward? If not, the public hearing is closed.
Your Honor, in regards to item B, we are having a contractor build this and then sell it. Who gets the funds? The ultimate buyer or the contractor?
The buyer.
Thank you.
The homeowner. With that, then I will ask for a resolution for the 2103 Wyrens Road.
I'll offer that.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mike. Roll call.
Rachel.
Yes.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
Clayton.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The next resolution is for the property on 803 East Mount Faith. Somebody care to offer that?
I'll offer that.
Thank you, Laura.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Laurel. Roll call.
Rachel.
Yes.
Kilby.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Joel.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
Clayton.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is the awarding of bids. Resolution consenting to the city's cost participation and awarding the construction contract PI 5362, the Fir Avenue, Cash 1, and Freiburg Avenue, MSAS number 126, Roundabout Improvement Project, SAP 126 123006. And I will call from Brian Yavaro,
Yes, thank
City
you.
Engineer.
Good evening, Your Honor and council members. Yes, back on January 16th, the Otter Tail County opened up 6 bids and read publicly aloud. The apparent low bidder was Joe Riley Construction with a total bid amount of $2,053,005. Engineer's estimate at the time was $1,780,000. So like I mentioned, Otter Tail County being lead agency has evaluated the bids, did a post-bid interview, and determined Joe Riley's Construction's bid to be in order and responsive. Just want to note, last December, an application was submitted to the Local Road Improvement Program, LRIP, to fund a portion of this project. The state awarded the city county $790,000 to apply, of which 100% will be applied to the city's eligible costs and the remaining funds towards the county. Note, the utilities and engineering expenses aren't eligible, just the construction costs. Otter Tail County is requesting the city consent to our cost share, and they're looking to award this contract. I'm recommending myself that we award it. If acceptable, construction could begin this spring and be substantially completed in fall. So just going to the budgetary impact, estimated the total project cost with the $790,000 LRIP grant is a $1,923,682 project. Of that, the estimated county share is $1,586,000. Let's just say $1,587,000, and the total estimated city share is $336,700. We're looking to fund, as I mentioned, we're doing some utility replacements, so we're looking about $174,700 city construction state aid funding, which we have adequate funding in that account. Looking at city water enterprise fund of about $74,500, and the city sanitary sewer enterprise fund of about $90,000, both of which have been programmed into the city's capital improvement project. So if you'll note, I've also provided a letter by Otter Tail County, and I've also provided a large detailed breakout of how these costs were arrived at. I would like to note, if you're looking at that last attachment, row 6, the participant in LRIP grant, shows how that money is applied. So of the city's eligible costs of about $675,000, that's covering the city's eligible costs 100%, and the remaining $115,000 of that grant is being applied to the county's portion of eligible expenses. So at this time, I'll open up to any questions you may have, but I'm requesting a resolution consenting to the city's cost participation and awarding the construction services contract to Joe Riley Construction. So I'll open up to any questions you may have.
Thank you. There's a lot of numbers there. What was the net cost to the city?
Could we get a resolution?
I'll offer the resolution.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Laurel. Mark?
I'm sorry.
Yep.
What's the net cost to the taxpayer of Fergus Falls?
Our local share you're referring to?
Yep.
Yes, with the engineering and the construction contract, $336,700.
Typically for utilities. Because the 795, the grant money's taking care of the roundabout. Am I reading this right?
If you go back to that prior sheet, you can show the street, primarily street and storm infrastructure, state aid eligible items are applicable to the grant. Engineering costs, soft costs, the column overhead are not applicable, or local utilities. If you note, the sewer we have that we're replacing beneath the new roundabout is vintage from 1940s, 8-inch PCP pipe. The water main too is of same era as well. So it's an opportune time to have those replaced prior to constructing the roundabout. Plus they'll be realigned as well, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Brian? If not, roll call.
Rachels,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Fish,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Forming,
Yes.
Layton,
No.
Krameyer,
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no petitions and communications. We are to the consent agenda. I think it will be placed upon the screens. There as stated earlier, item 4 will be removed. Would somebody care to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Laurel. Will somebody second it?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Roll call.
Rachel,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Fish,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Forming,
Yes.
Layton,
Yes.
Krameyer,
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The remaining items are approved. Item 4, resolution approving library policies. Councilmember Kwame, you had some questions.
Yeah, the question in particular is on page 1 of the art policy that's in the packet, on packet page
Would
28.
you rather speak better in your microphone?
I thought I was in it. Okay, I'll get a little closer. Specifically, it's questioning on page 1 of the art policy in the packet, which is page 28 in the packet. Through the various lines that have been edited in the art policy, there's identification of the words used, equity and inclusion. And in some places those are removed, but in one place it's not. And in the first line, purpose of hosting public art exhibits, building a permanent art collection, and circulating art is to, there's 5 different lines, provide free access to a wide range of art, promote a deeper appreciation of the arts, increase art literacy, provide exposure for artists, and provide equity and inclusion. I think had we received this art policy a year ago, maybe even less, no one would have even thought anything of it. But in the current political climate, when we hear words like equity and inclusion, alarm bells tend to go off, and it makes some folks a little nervous, let's say. My suggestion is that we send this policy back to the Fergus Falls Library Board and ask that they revise it to eliminate that language, and I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Your Honor, with the library director here, could we give her the opportunity to speak to this if she would like?
Absolutely.
Back here. See there, it's
Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this issue. With me this evening is also Matt Lape, the president of the Library Advisory Board, who can also respond to this concern. So at our library board meetings, we routinely revisit library policies so that we know what we're doing and what we're dealing with. Sometimes those policies are perfectly fine and they stand without changes. Regarding the art policy, we began working on this in 2021. We decided to make some changes based on the fact that we had originally included an art committee, which we recognized was redundant because the city already has an art committee. We wanted to make it more succinct. And so the point in question, specifically to section 1, bullet point E, what we are talking about is we are talking about providing equity and inclusion for access to art. We are talking about ensuring that our public, the people who live in our community, have equitable access to art. That's what we're talking about. We're saying that we want, that we're building a permanent collection and a circulating collection because we're one of the few libraries that allows you to check out artwork. And we want art that is available to everyone and is inclusive for everyone. And as the policy goes on to say in section 2, bullet point C, we want there to be diversity in that art collection, different art formats and mediums, artists representing different perspectives, cultures, ideas. Yes, we want this to be an interesting collection, and we want to make sure that everybody has equitable access. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Your Honor,
Yep.
could we add on E for access to art to clarify that? I mean, would that be an acceptable thing to add to the end of that sentence?
Mayor, Councilperson Kilby, I can certainly bring that back to our board and have them review that policy with that suggestion if you would like.
I thank you for your comments. I'm a man of simple principles. There's right and wrong. I really don't like to classify male, female, black, white, brown, brown. When it comes to arts, I think it's been broad for centuries across the line. We don't need to make a line so that it's not inclusive. I struggle with the progressiveness of diversity and equity. Art is art. My perception and your perceptions are different, but we don't have to draw a line there. No different than between boy and girl. I think it should be neutral, and that's my position.
So, does anybody have anything else? If not, we have a motion to send this back. Laura, did you have any?
I guess I do. I kind of, what Laurel said, I think makes sense. If we can find some words that we can add into that to better explain, you know, like Gail did, just explain to us, you know, the purpose of those words, I think would go a long way.
I would add that I don't think this is not talking about people or
Right.
gender. This is talking about diversity of art, whether it's, you know, something made out of steel or something that's on a canvas or something that's made out of pottery. So I think we're picking on small things when we have, you know, bigger things to look at, but we'll send it back if that's the pleasure of the council. So all those in favor to return it to the library, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is approved to return it to the library board. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the ordinance and resolutions, Westridge Mall purchase agreement and potential actions.
Your Honor, I make a motion that this be tabled.
Somebody second that?
Clarification, are we asking table both or one or which, both?
Thank you for the question. We have two matters in front of us. Number one, participating with the Otter Tail County CDA, and number two, participating with the acquisition of the mall. I specifically speak of tabling the acquisition of the mall. We're 30 days into a 120-day period in efforts to provide additional information to this board.
Did we get a second?
No.
Point of order, Your Honor. Are we on number one, or are we on A, or are we on B? Which one are we on? On A, right? The EDC.
No, I think Councilmember Layton is talking about 1B.
Okay, so we do A first, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But we need a second to Councilmember Layton's.
Is Councilmember Layton willing to, I mean, Your Honor, hold back on that motion and let us process through A first?
May I ask the council to move on my motion before we go to A?
Possible. I mean,
Well, it dies for lack of a second.
yeah. So it is died because there's no second. So we'll move on to A, the resolution authorizing the city of Fergus Falls to participate in Otter Tail County EDA. And technically, this would be an Andrew, but Bill will go to the podium in his on his behalf. But I think just to preface kind of obviously this discussion, obviously part of this is regarding, obviously, the mall. And the CDA, after kind of discussion, both at task force and committee of the whole meetings, we've had both Commissioner Sullivan and Nick Leonard, assistant for the county, explain how the function of the CDA would work within the city. And it is my understanding that even after we approve this, if we approve it, that it will not affect the city's tax, the taxes on city residents, and would obviously allow the CDA to continue to do projects within the city if invited, and would obviously allow them to do diligence and do preparation work on the mall. With that, over to Bill.
I don't know if I can say a whole lot more. You summarized that pretty well. But yeah, your first item here is a resolution authorizing participation in the CDA, and we've certainly talked about that over time. So again, to reinforce what the county had said, that they're here to be supportive and additive, to work with the city on the projects that you wish to do. So that is the first item in this. So in order to do anything with the mall, with the county, we would need to be a participant with the CDA. So that's up for your discussion and your wishes, and a motion on that resolution.
I will offer the resolution that we participate with Otter Tail County EDA.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Scott Rachels.
Your Honor, a question?
Yep.
For the sake of public, I think there's some confusion. EDA and CDA have been thrown around, kind of interchanged. I understand the difference, but I'm not completely sure that everyone that's watching this understands that based on conversations I had. Is it possible to get some real clear clarification, just so people understand why two different sets of initials?
Sure. So I can speak to it a little bit, but you correct me if I'm wrong. How does that sound? So the Otter Tail County Community Development Agency, CDA, that's the name they go by. They are established under state law as an economic development authority, so an EDA. So they are an economic development authority doing business as the CDA, a community development. Is it agency or authority? CDA, what's the A?
Good question.
Sorry, I just thought of that now.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Regardless, okay, it's authority.
It's an agency, actually, in
Okay.
the resolution.
Regardless, it is a good question. It is an economic development authority. It falls under that area of statute. Okay.
As spoken at the last committee of the whole, I have no heartburn with becoming a partner with Otter Tail County in their EDA, CDA, whatever you want to call it. We've indicated at the last committee of the whole meeting that this contract will run about 5 or 6 years. It can sit in a drawer and do nothing, or we can use it as best we can. I've had a lot of conversations on this. I believe we've been thrown into a lion's cage where historically, 20 years, that the city hasn't had an opportunity to work with Otter Tail County, and it's time to make that change. I don't understand why there hasn't been one, but if this would mend those, allow the city to participate in more economic development, if anyone would define that to me, more economic development in cooperations with the county.
And this EDA was established, was that in 2018 or 2019? I think roughly that time frame. So this is a newer organization to the county that we would be participating in.
Any other questions?
Your Honor, I think I'll just make a statement. I was part of the task force that you appointed me to with the mall, and I want people to know that are watching here tonight that the city joining the CDA tonight does not mean that the mall is purchased in this agreement. What this is in our task force, it quickly became evident that the city needs to make some connection with the CDA to kind of guide the CDA and what they want done. I took it before that the CDA kind of would do what they were going to do, but meeting with Nick Leonard and others from the county, it was evident that the CDA gets brought into your city and then they kind of ask you, what can we do to help you? And so this agreement today has some to do with the mall, but this does not mean the mall is purchased because of this agreement. And I support this agreement with the CDA because when we get into the mall discussion, we'll talk more about some of the things that we need that CDA to be able to do for the businesses that are out there at the mall. So I wanted to kind of clarify that for the people at home.
Thank you. Yep, they are invited into the city on projects, as opposed to ostensibly. If there's no further questions, we'll do a roll call.
Rachel's.
Yes.
Hildy.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Freemeyer.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The resolution is approved.
Your Honor, may I ask that the next ordinances be tabled so we can continue to acquire the necessary information on the acquisition of the mall?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mark Layton and Mike Mortensen that the acquisition of the mall purchase agreement be tabled for 30 days.
I would say to the end of the 120 days that we're in. 120 days, we're about, what, 35 days in? We could act faster. There's been a lot of conversation, but not much motion on this.
There is no discussion with that, right? It's just a vote.
It's just a vote. So it is just a vote. So a vote to say we either, everybody is in agreement to postpone it.
I'm welcome to discussion.
There is
No.
no discussion
There is no
on
discussion.
tabling.
Pardon me?
So roll call?
No.
It's a motion.
A motion? But you can do a roll call. I think we should do a roll call for clarity.
Rachel's.
No.
Hildy.
No.
Fish.
No.
Joe.
No.
Kwame.
No.
Layton.
Yes.
Freemeyer.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The motion is fails. Yep. So it stands that we have a resolution approving the assignment,
Should have
I think we have to make.
someone should make a resolution.
so now, we need a resolution.
Your Honor, for purposes of starting discussion, I'd like to offer a motion or a resolution that has some safety in it for our taxpayers so we can start some discussion on this. That the agreement would be contingent and with some insertion of language by Mr. Nicolomo that requires the state grant dollars remain priority as stated in the grant agreement, but clarifies that any further dollars from the sale of this property first go to making the county taxpayer whole to the extent that the sale price allows, and that any unsecured debt, which is approximately $400,000 at this time, is listed as payable if money remains after repaying the county. So their expenses come first in effort of trying to pay back the county taxpayer. Secondly, a contingency in our agreement that a joint task force that includes members from our body with the county CDA to work on the redevelopment of the mall is in place for the duration of the county's ownership of this property. And I believe it's my understanding that they have agreed to that, but you can speak to that, Mayor.
I think that ultimately that was the case. Maybe, does somebody wish to, would you be able to read the, okay, okay.
Provide exact wording.
We need a second for a start on the.
I'll second that.
Laura has seconded it. So basically, we have a resolution to agree to a purchase agreement with some contingencies, which basically are that obviously if there is a sale of the property, that state and county local taxpayers are paid first, and any unsecured debtors would be after that, and that we would continue with a joint task force to discuss the purpose and reuse of the mall thereafter. So discussion.
Your Honor, I was on the road today and I dictated to my assistant, I have a statement here. If you don't mind, allow me to have this read. If my technology would work.
Your Honor, I request request the opportunity to address the citizens of Fergus Falls and specifically those in Ward 2 who elected me. I ran on the basis of honest transparency from this council, and that's the only thing you'll hear from me. In regards to the mall transaction, this is not a political transaction. I'm not here to make a political statement or appease the taxpayer who are in favor or not in favor of the transaction. I am here to present the facts in an open and honest dialogue and ask this body for more time. It's important that the council act in a prudent legal manner that doesn't put the city into what they refer to as a slippery slope. We have an out-of-town company who has not been a good landlord, not followed his contractual agreements, nor has this company paid its utilities, third-party bills, and not local real estate taxes. Now this company is asking for public monies to pay off secure creditors, his bank, and leave unsecured creditors, utilities, and local real estate taxes unpaid. Now you ask what the slippery slope is. So if your local business that can't pay your bank mortgage and elects not pay your real estate taxes, is it the responsibility of the city to bail you out? The council is asked to move on to 2 matters tonight. One, City Fergus Falls participates with Otter Tail County CDA, and number 2, proceed with the acquisition of purchasing the mall. We're in 30 days of a 120-day open window permitting us to get more information on this deal. There are various options available, everything from eminent domain to demanding the property be torn down due to its condition. At this point, there are simply too many unknowns regarding what is proper, what is not proper to move on this tonight. This is not as easy as economic development and to saving 4 businesses. I know this is not the case. Your Honor, I have a few more points to address. Please.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think just as some background, obviously, to this the $650,000 that the county was awarded. This came from the Energy Transition Grant, and that grant was established. The grant fund was established to provide dollars to communities that were impacted by coal plant closures, and I received a call from Senator Rasmussen regarding kind of this grant, and it got brought up as well in our legislation committee on Friday that Senator Rasmussen did, in fact, offer an amendment to this grant within the state to include Fergus Falls, because originally it was only allocated to Xcel Energy plants. This from which we got the 650. The maximum you can apply for in any one transaction is $1 million. And this is also going, there's a further pool nominated for $5 million again this year. It's a rolling fund. And this money is only available to impacted communities. So it's limited to what cities that obviously can receive these dollars. They are state dollars in a grant format versus city dollars. So these monies will not come from Fergus Falls taxpayer or get added to their bill. They've already been collected by the state on the taxes that we all pay, and they are distributed by this fund. And if we do not obviously take advantage of them or use them, then they will simply go to another community. It's limited to the communities it will go to, but they will go to somebody else if we don't consume them. So I think we all had the opportunity to go through them all. Some previous and some we did a site visit on the 21st. I think everybody would agree that it is in tough shape. I think the CDA being agreeable to a continuation of some form of task force. Otter Tail Power in funding the study on utilities and separation. I think that we have a new county commissioner in Sean Sullivan, who also sits on the CDA board within the county. I think one of my pledges was similar to Mark's, to work closer with the county, and I think that I know that I've had more conversation with Commissioner Sullivan, in his time of office, than on county, city things, than obviously previously. So I think the first task is that the fund that Otter Tail Power has kindly donated money to will work on the utilities and separation. The CDA, obviously, now that we have engaged them, will be able to work on that. I think the first task is the separation. Going through the building, it is a needed thing. We speak about obviously being business friendly, and we have an opportunity here to prove it. There are going to be opportunities for retail within kind of a restructuring, but I think we have to see what it can be. And I think there are additional grant funds from the energy transition that would help us do that. So if there is the need to do any more studies, last week I did also speak with Clara's assistance to the people that administrate this grant, and there are many different areas of which we can apply for further funding, or in this case the county would actually be applying for those further funders. I think it doesn't only impact the 4 current businesses, but it lays a foundation. I think Council Member Mortensen had some great actual ideas about how he envisaged the new mall, as it were, by removing buildings and creating some green space and pathways to kind of have individual entrances to some of those businesses. And I think that we can get there. We want economic development in the community. This would become one of our first opportunities as a council to lay down a foundation and get something done. And I know and I appreciate that I have had, like many of you, multiple calls, texts, emails. We've received both for and against, but tonight it is about doing the right thing, moving this thing forward, to get it done one way or the other, so that we do not continue to hammer at something that goes nowhere. So with that, has anybody else got anything to say?
Your Honor, I appreciate your comments in regards to some of the thoughts and insight that I had to the mall. I just need a point of order. We're in a motion, right? And or we're not resolution, but can we know what that resolution is again? What we're voting on here?
So, I think
Me to read it?
I think
Lynn,
has
you want me to read it?
Laurel.
Okay.
Laurel kind of stated it because
What-
she added some amendments to it.
I just need to know if we're in the resolution to purchase them all at this moment, or if we're in the resolution that Councilmember Kildee has, which is different.
Resolution to purchase with those contingencies is what I thought I made.
Yep.
Basically, the resolution, there's a purchase agreement sitting out there. The resolution is to assign that purchase agreement to the county
With these
with those
contingencies.
additional contingencies.
Is that what you thought you seconded?
Yes, okay, yeah.
Your Honor, I appreciate your comments as well. We've had a lot of conversations, likewise with constituents. I've seen both yes and no. If we each have seen 20, we're looking at 160, 180 people who have applied or commented on this project, both for and against. If we have 6,000 voters in Fergus Falls, I don't know where the population really is. I'm not saying we should not do it, and I'm not saying we should do it. I'm saying that we need to look at all the avenues that are available to us. I've had a great deal of great conversations with contractors, attorneys, other council people, and when I was reading last night, because of the health issues that building presents, it could be condemned tomorrow, and I'm speaking a little smart. There are steps to be taken, but that's a hazardous facility. And the state has statutes that say how to approach this. The city or the county can act against this. We need to push the entity that owns this and has the first mortgage on this to act. The bottom line is, I'm not going to reward him, this entity, for his mismanagement. And if any local community business who can't pay their bills because they only were selling black crayons and no longer can stay in business, it's not this city's job to bail them out. I'm asking for more time and look at all the options. And when I say more time, Your Honor, with all due respect, those meetings should be held every day. Thank you.
Your Honor, can Mr. Nicolomo speak to that, the comments that Mr. Layton just had about, I mean, the process, is that even an option? Like, to me, there would be extreme legal costs in going after condemnation, things like that, that we would be spending a lot of money in that process. I could be wrong.
I don't even know where you'd start, you know, I mean, to try to, I don't know where you would even start. I mean, to try to engage the state to come in and take control of this is what I think I heard you say.
Well, no disrespect, I'm not an attorney, but I read the statute that a building of this nature, of this condition, there are avenues that can expedite this thing. Now, is it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? I don't know. Is it $5,000 or $50,000? I don't know. I'm looking for that time spent now before we reward a man who has the worst business practices, and then we send the money to Illinois, and our local unsecured creditors go, in essence, free. They have to eat it. Now, I know there's discussions there, don't get me wrong, but it's not me.
I mean, if you tear down a building and it's someone else's property, you may end up in a condemnation proceeding where you have to reimburse them for, you know, their loss. Now, I don't know what that loss would be for that building. That building, you know, what's the value of the building as it currently stands? So I mean, the state just can't step in and take things from people without compensation. So I hear what you're saying, Mark. I mean, if you want to look at looking into that, certainly can, but.
Yeah, I'm not here to T-bone you. I'm just saying that.
But I don't think that's outside of the resolution that's on
Yep.
the table. The resolution is to approve the purchase agreement with the contingencies as stated by Councilmember Kildee.
Correct.
Laura?
I have a question here on due diligence. You know, it states that the county will be responsible for continued due diligence, including negotiating, you know, things like that. Can you just clarify that for me? What is left that the county has to continue or commit to? Yeah, do you know? I asked Sean the same thing, and he wasn't exactly sure either, so.
I think the county.
Hey, Ralph, could you put your mic in front?
You're hard to hear
There
today,
you go.
sorry.
Thank you.
I think the county still has obligations to have discussions with some of the other creditors, securing their agreements. I think that's something, I don't know where they're at with that. But other than that, I think the county, you know, has reviewed the assignment and novation agreement that we've drafted, understands that they're going to be stepping in the city's shoes on this transaction. So I'm assuming that they've done whatever due diligence that they need to do, because I believe they're prepared to sign that agreement.
Okay, thank you.
And then roll call.
Rachel.
Yes.
Kildee.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
Layton. Layton.
Abstain.
Kramer.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is the resolution
Honor.
approving.
Could I make a motion? Point of order. Hopefully it's all right.
I don't know.
I interrupted you.
That's my man.
Ask Mr. Nicomo if that's all right.
Can you make a point of order?
Yeah, well, I'd like to make a motion if that's all right at this moment. In regards to CDA, the city, some different things, just some clarification that we can use going forward. Is that all right? Yeah. Your Honor, what I'd like to do is, we've made an agreement now with the city, or with the county. We've made it with the CDA. This purchase is going to go over to the county. One of the things, well, there's a couple things very important to me, but the motion will be that I would like to see the council make an official position that we need to have those businesses' fire suppression taken care of as soon as possible. And I'd like us to make a motion that we make that position to go forward to the CDA and go with the task force that's going to join that CDA to do this. Those businesses are everything to this project, everything. And I think if we don't make a stand as a council to say that, it can get lost in the motion. So it's nothing more than a motion to let the CDA know that our priority is number one, those businesses' fire suppression, which can be split. And that's the motion that I'd like for the council.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Laurel. I would agree. I mean, I have that on my list as the first task is separation of utilities. So we have a motion on the floor. Sorry, do you have something else?
I think you have to do this, and I want to bring up something too as far as a clarification, what I'd like the county to be considered. It did talk about separation of the fire suppression as touring that building, which was awful. I want to see something happen to that area. I want to see some growth. From what I understand, the businesses, I believe their power is already separated. Is that correct, Steve? Yep. Okay, so we have that's already situated. That was not conveyed to us in the previous council from what I took forth. So that part's already done. What I would like to see, though, too, is after touring that building with all the black mold that's in there. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the black mold can go through cinder block, as talked about by a construction examiner or a construction inspector. So that's a threat to those businesses that are out there. And I don't want to see anything happen to them. So I would also make a motion that those businesses be split off the existing building, because that is a major threat.
We have a motion on the floor that we need to vote for first.
Yep. I'm just want to bring that up, please.
So the motion that's on the floor is about the first task of the CDA would be to separate the utilities, particularly the fire suppression system.
Yes.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Motion is approved. We will make that recommendation to them.
Now, if I could I jump back to that?
I just wanted to jump in. We're trying to tell the county what to
I was
do,
gonna s-
and I just don't think that's,
Yeah, no.
they're going to do what's best for everybody, I think, anyway. So I don't want us to be pushing already. We have a task force, obviously, it's going to be put in place. There are people, that's where you could bring that stuff to the table. That's what
Yeah.
motions like this are just going to confuse everything.
I disagree with Scott. This motion was to show the quality of the council as one, and we did that. And we showed that we had one voice with the CDA, not just the task force voice. And I think that was a great move by the council.
And I think it goes without saying on some of the other things. I mean, whether we have a laundry list of kind of things that we want them to do, I think they know that. They know what's to be done.
Your Honor, no disrespect, Councilman Rachels. You were aware of this in May, came in front of the council in October, and now you're asking us to act in 30 days. It was poorly handled up front, and now it's trying to be pushed down our throat in 30 days. It's very unfortunate. This thing was sold on saving 4 businesses, which is not the case, and dividing utilities, and that's not the case. I'm here, again, as I dictated, I'm here for full transparency, and I was dealt this hand of cards, and I got to play with it.
Can we go back to the agenda of item C is a resolution approving the assignment and assumption agreement contingent on successful closing of real estate transaction. And that's basically, maybe Rolf can explain that one, is to hand it over to the county.
this is the agreement relating to what is owed to the city through this transaction. And what part of the discussion that the council had previously is that, and the purchase agreement requires that all of the creditors enter into an assignment of their interest to ensure that, A, if there's any money that's going to be left over based upon a sale, after those required expenses are taken out, that they would get reimbursed. So that's what's before you now, is just the city debt associated with this property. All the other creditors have a very similar agreement that I'm sure the county is working diligently on, trying to secure their signatures. But this is involving the city debt, and allows that debt may go away, it may not, but it ensures that if the property is sold or developed or by the county at a later date, and there's excess monies after payment of grant dollars, after payment of county expenses, after payment of anything else associated with this, then the unsecured creditors would come in and be paid. So that's what's before you now.
Your Honor?
We'll offer that resolution, Your Honor.
I'll second
Thank
it.
you,
No
Jim.
discuss or no.
Your Honor?
Right.
Can Mr. Nicomo point out the difference between what we're voting on now with this resolution and what Councilmember Kildee had put in our other resolution with the purchase? She had put a lot of these things, I think, very similar in the last resolution, if I'm not wrong.
That's correct, and what I envision is that we would amend this agreement to say basically the same thing. And I would encourage the county to do so with their assignments that they're working on with other creditors, unsecured creditors, so everyone is on the same page and understands that if there are monies left over after proceeds and after payment of grant dollars and after payment of county expenses, that then they would be distributed to the unsecured creditors listed in the purchase agreement. So what Ms. Kildee offered was to ensure that, that the public money get reimbursed first, and that if there's any money left over after the public money had been paid, that the unsecured creditors would then get their fair share. Correct?
Roll call.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is a motion directing staff to prepare a maintenance agreement between, actually, one more. Al, coming back to you. You wanted to put a motion about, the separation of the building,
Yeah, I would like
but,
I guess, we've talked about saving these businesses. And as I mentioned, those of you who did go through the mall know it's pretty bad.
yeah.
And, as the building inspector had mentioned, that it can migrate through these cinder block walls. Who knows how far it is? Some of those areas are pretty bad. And with the black mold, the fire suppression system, the pump that has the drive shaft to it, the shroud for the pump is a half a 5-gallon bucket. And I don't know how stuff like that ever got passed with an inspection, but it did. So I want these businesses to be safe.
Yep.
I want it to continue, but I'd really like to see, and it would be a fairly easy process to do that.
I think maybe if we make a motion to ask that the CDA make it a priority to one of their first tasks.
I would
don't think
like
we
to-
can- I don't think we can say you must do it, but at least if we could make a motion to say, express our concerns so they're out there in the public.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we have a motion to send a message to the county, the CDA, that, expressing the concerns from a health and safety perspective of the building. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign.
Aye.
One against, but the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a motion. This is just a motion to direct staff to prepare a maintenance agreement between the YMCA of the Northern Sky and the city for former gas station parking lot at 1040 East Fir Avenue. At this point, there is nothing particularly to discuss because it's a motion to ask staff to prepare a document which will then come back to the council for them to edit and approve. And I thank Councilmember Layton. He's already sent some comments in that will go to Brian for inclusion in this document. So,
Thank you.
would somebody care to make the motion?
I'll offer that.
Thank you, Laurel.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. And does anybody wish to discuss anything on this? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is approved. Now we come to our favorite part of the evening, which is the presentation of claims in the amount of $1,238,478. Would somebody care to make a motion to pay the bills?
I'll offer the resolution to pay the bills.
Thank you, Jim, for the resolution. Would somebody care to second it?
I'll second.
Thank you, Scott. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Your Honor, Mayor, Bill and I have been having conversations with the new system that they have. And
The resolution is approved. to
yes,
pay
I'm
bills,
sorry. Yep. Just a clarification, with the new system, when I, as a council person, read through the presentation of claims, are they scanned that I have access to see the invoices, or are they just typed into the system?
We currently have them scanned into our current system, but they're not accessible. I don't know how that will work with the new system yet. I mean, we'll be doing that this summer, getting that in there. So I don't know if you will have access to actually pull up individual invoices or not. I envision it'll be a list of bills, much the same as this. But that's something we'll have to research as we go through that process.
And the new boy in the block, you know, I'm not familiar with, if you will, every now and then something comes up that's out of ordinary, how to examine that. And then not T-bone you and say, well, geez, Bill, you just paid $35,642.70 to John Doe.
Yep, and I don't have them memorized either. I will, when I look through, and I go through them all before we come here tonight. And if I look at something I don't recognize, then I go to, say, Guy, and say, your department, okay, I don't know this vendor, what did we pay? And I go look at the invoice. My staff has already looked at every invoice, but I do that for, if there's ever a vendor I don't know, I check to make sure, is that a legit vendor? It's something new. If I don't, but there are things most likely you'll just have to ask me if something feels out of the ordinary, because then I have to go and research it.
I talked to Mr. Knutson, and again, I don't want to get into your server and all that kind of stuff, but if I'd have access to the invoices, so thank you very
Yeah.
much. Be beneficial.
Right, thank you. Under old business, maybe Council Member Kwame, this came up again at the Legislative Commission meeting on Friday regarding Lake Alice water quality. And Scott, maybe you want to kind of talk a little bit about the project. We did approve this resolution of support. This is not a resolution spending any money. It is a resolution supporting state getting some funding to continue the work for 3D at Lake Alice. But over to Scott.
Yeah, I apologize for the short notice on this, and it was a matter of just the way the timing fell. We had our legislative committee meeting on Friday, and the agenda for this meeting had already been published on Thursday. And there's a bit of a sense of urgency to get this in front of the legislature and so that they can get it into their committee agendas and they can do what they need to do to put the bills together and whatnot. And in our meeting on Friday with Jordan Rasmussen, he pointed out that the sooner he could get this, the better. And that's what led me to bringing this to the floor tonight. This resolution of support is the same wording as the one that we approved last year, and then last year's legislative session ended up with nothing happening, and so we're kind of back to asking the same question again, and so the date has simply been changed on it. Essentially, this resolution says that we, the city, support Water Quality's 3D pilot project on Lake Alice. There's a lot more words to it, whereas, but it's be resolved that the city of Fergus Falls supports a 2-year extension of the Lake Alice Water Quality Project until 2027 and request an additional state-funded appropriation. So it's at no cost to the city. It just extends the project as it's been going so that more data can be collected and more good can be done. And I believe it's a fairly simple ask. If we can pass this resolution tonight and forward it on to Jordan Rasmussen and eventually then also to Jeff Backer and the others that will then work to get this bill together. Joel Carlson also was in on that call on Friday, our legislative connection, and between Joel and Jordan, they were both looking forward to seeing this come from us.
Thank you.
Mr. Kwame, thank you for your effort on this. What do you think is the reason for the 2-year delay?
Oh, it's not a delay. It's simply an extension of the project. So I'm not sure I follow your question.
Okay, I might be understanding this wrong, but
Can we just get a resolution? You're offering
Yeah,
a resolution?
I offered the resolution,
second
sure.
And Laura second it.
I'm jumping the gun, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So does this mean that the money has been set off for 2 years, or the project is just extended for 2 years? What does it mean?
Okay, I can understand that. When this was originally started 2.5 years ago, the state funded the project at $40,000, and we agreed to do it. The city found a used dock to put in, so we had a place to mount the equipment. And our expense at that time was simply installing an electrical outlet so the thing could be plugged in. There'll be no ongoing expenses beyond the cost of a little electricity to run the pump going forward. And with the good results that this project has seen over the last 1.5 years or so with reducing the odor around Lake Alice, by continuing the project and getting more data, essentially, Water Quality 3D will then be in a better position to, show the effectiveness of this equipment. And that's the whole point of the pilot project. Again, it will be at no cost to the city going forward, and it simply extends the pilot project for 2 years.
To boil it down, the monitoring. Thank you very much for this effort.
It goes down to have the state pay the next 2 years again like they did before. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
what-
asking the state to appropriate the money,
Asking for
correct.
more money, yeah.
Any other questions? If not, roll call.
Yes.
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 The resolution is approved. There is miscellaneous items that on Friday the 7th will be the council retreat. On the 12th, it will be the committee of the whole. And then on the 17th, there'll be a holiday closure for observation of President's Day. So I believe that is a Monday. So garbage will all have a 1-day delay in that. So Mondays will be Tuesdays, Tuesdays will be Wednesdays, and then 18th will be another council meeting. And I think we pretty much, believe most people are attending the retreat. Is that the case?
I am.
Your Honor, I apologize. I won't be there. I have patience.
Right. Thank you, Mike. But to a robust discussion about economic development and communications.
Your Honor, one thing, on the next council agenda or committee of the whole, can we get some updates on ongoing projects? I've gotten a lot of comments from people in mall discussion, actually, asking status of some other things, such as the Bigwood conversation with the realtors and things like that. And I know those are points we've touched on, but if we could circle back so the public could be updated on some of those.
Right. Yep, we can do.
And I would like to remind the task force for the mall that we meet more regularly and get responses back from our questions. And hopefully Ralph can help us.
Is the task force for the mall still ongoing?
I'm not sure where we'll go with that, but as it's now a county, I think we can do that. But I think I'll get back to you on that. Thank you. Cecily, just before we adjourn.
Being you brought up the mall again, I guess I just see one piece that's kind of missing in the transparency with the mall. You're doing the partnership, city, county, state help, and so forth. But the silent thing that I haven't heard anything is these 4 businesses that we are rushing in to save. Are they doing any partnership with us? I'm curious as to what's going on, if there's any dialogue with them, but nothing's been shared. And that's my only comment question.
I know we've for sure had dialogue with, on a personal level with the cinema. And I know the county has had dialogue with some of the other businesses.
Okay.
But I can't.
Nothing to share yet?
I believe all of them, the county's been involved. Steve just left, but
Okay.
I think that they've been involved in all of them.
Yep.
They've been talking with all of them.
And
Okay.
part of it, I think, is important to recognize. 2 of them are tenants of the one parcel. 2 of them are tenants, and so in some ways, the conversation with that group has to be with the property owner versus the tenant because they have agreements there. So that's just another piece.
Harbor
to keep in
Freight and
mind.
Dollar Tree, I
right,
understand
correct.
that.
Right. Yep.
Okay, but there's nothing been given to the public, nothing that's been allowed to be leaked out from that yet?
We'd have to ask the county.
Okay.
Which we can do.
Okay, thank you.
That would be Otter Tail Power's conversations, not ours. We don't, they had their own conversations, we don't, I don't know what they said, but I know they've been communicating with them, so.
All right, okay, thank you.
Right, the city council meeting is adjourned, and I think we have a Port Authority meeting following this.
This is what's nice, I was Al.
Yeah.
What are they talking about? I don't even know what they're saying. Oh, that's why those people showed up then, okay.
Cece. Cece.
You voted for it, Anthony voted for it, Mike and I voted for it, Fish did not, Laura voted for it, and,
I guess I have to. I got.
you know, those 2 didn't realize it went down, the ball deal was dead, which I think is kind of funny.
Right. You are funny.
And then what happened in the first 45 days that changed this all of a sudden? Why does this have to be done? We never did our. And
That's why I'm asking.
The committee met once. We never
We
talked
had
to
some
any of the players.
environmental questions 2 weeks ago. So, hi.
And, you know, I'd rather hear more. But what specifics of what you know, Anthony voted to extend he's pushed to retain control. You voted to extend. And that's what I don't understand. What happens between now and then?
I knew you were.
They had no choice. Because it didn't work.
Okay. Okay.
But you know, as far as condemning things too, is what I don't understand. How does the scientific approach to it? Is this different? I mean, there's certain things that you can't have.
Okay.
But, I mean, what I think is funny too is when you talk about a blighted building as shop.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay. We are going to call this Port Authority meeting to order.
We have a Port Authority meeting
Yep.
going on, please.
So we're going to call this to order. Where's he at?
Scott,
No, this. Yeah, that's.
we have a Port Authority meeting.
Yeah, I know. I was like, we're yelling at all.
Right?
Do we do roll call? We don't, do we? No, just recognize it. Just recognize it.
Thank you.
I've never been recognized.
All right, we have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes and the agenda for this evening.
I'll motion that.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Laurel and Jim. Thank you. We do, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We have Balanced Rock Power presentation. Carolina and Nick are here. Thank you again for coming. I know that we had you a couple of months ago, but we appreciate you coming back.
Well, we wanted to come when it was a little warmer, so.
Right. Good for, yeah, yeah.
Never experienced this kind of cold before, but new experience. Liking it.
Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone.
So you guys can try to dance.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe enter. I will run them for you. Okay, thank you.
I'll give you the points.
Yeah, just point.
Sounds good. Hi everyone, good evening. So here on behalf of Balanced Rock Power, I'm Nick, this is Carolina. We met with most of you, I think back in October, but like I said, wanted to come back when it was a little warmer. So appreciate you guys having us here. Goal today is to kind of go through the presentation we went through last time. At a high level, I believe there's new members, so wanted to kind of inform everyone what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and then kind of answer any questions you guys may have and kind of update the progress of where we're at on the project as a whole. So just at a high level, little information about that. Sorry, go to the next one, agenda. Little information about the Balanced Rock. Here today, back in October, we came, Carolina, myself, and Alec. Alec decided to have a baby and is on paternity leave, so he's down in Minneapolis. So he's our original, he was the one with the original idea. Next slide, please. In general, Balanced Rock Power, we're renewable energy developers. Our goal is really to be the first ones who come in, kind of have the idea and create a project. We are maybe have 45 people now, so a really small team, which gives us ability to move fast. There's big companies that just move really slow, but we're really nimble. Carolina and I are based in Houston, but as you can see, all of our projects are mostly out in the West, and now we're starting to venture out up north. We have some one-pagers here that kind of show that and just give more information. So if you guys just want to maybe pass these around, I'll split them out. One up here. This just talks about our company values, where we're located, where we have our headquarters, etc. But yeah, so I love working here. I've been there 3 years now and don't see myself anywhere else. Same thing as was discussing, kind of the things we stand behind. Those are our 4 partners that founded this company 3 years ago. Yeah. Big picture about what we're trying to do here. We're trying to essentially build a battery project at a utility scale. So we're the first ones, we're the original developers. We're gonna come in and find the potential land, work with landowners like the Fergus Falls Port Authority, and then start de-risking the project, obtain permits, work with the utility. And all this is kind of what that first stage when we go in, and then kind of create this idea, this dream that 5 years down the road we'll be able to build such said project. So that's where we're at now. I guess first part that you see, that origination part, is kind of what we did, the analysis like last summer. We identified Otter Tail County, specifically this Fergus Falls site, and then we're in that development stage where, you know, we've extended an offer to you guys. We're in negotiations for a potential land deal. Once we secure the land, we keep going with that process, which is mostly working with the utility, which tends to be the kind of long pole in the tent. So at a whole, that's what our company does. That's our bread and butter. And then we get it to the point where you can likely start construction, get all the permits, and then we sell it to a company that's going to own it and operate it for the next 30 years. We'll call independent power producers or the utility. And yeah, so I think I touched on it most last time, what we're actually trying to do. So really trying to create a big battery. So same batteries you see on your phones, but a much larger scale. The reason for this is mostly all the renewables coming online on the grid, like, are intermittent. So the sun is not always shining and the wind's not always blowing. So when it's not, these batteries are used to kind of firm up that network. And it's really essentially needed much crucial in our infrastructure. Like we said, we live in Texas. In ERCOT, like that's our kind of electricity down there. We were able to, this summer, ERCOT's like stayed online and had a lot of near misses because all the batteries that were online, and we're able to mitigate that risk. So that's kind of at a whole why we're doing this. And in general, these batteries look like, we'll see a picture on the next slide, but they're just big storage containers. They don't take that much space compared to what solar and wind do. And it's really used to kind of store energy when the sun's overshining and then dispatch it when you really need to. And then Killian will talk about why.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about why we're targeting Otter Tail County. So the number one reason is because there are a lot of transmission constraint in this area, meaning that there's sometimes that like the electricity generation just cannot be pushed into the transmission lines. Reason number two is that there is a lot of thermal retirement going on right now, so coal plants that are being closed down, and solar and wind being added into the grid. Like Nick was saying, what these batteries can do is store that energy that gets produced by wind or solar at the times that we maybe not need it. So the batteries store the energy and then dispatch it back into the grid when we need that energy once again. And then reason number three here is, I'm sure as you guys know, Minnesota does have that goal of achieving 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. So again, more wind, more solar, back to the intermittentness of it all. And then we're wanting to add these batteries onto the grid to make the grid more reliable.
Yeah, and sorry, go back. That's exactly what they look like, the bottom right.
Like big storage containers.
And just to give you context, let's say maybe that's a 100 megawatt plant. 100 megawatts of solar would need about like at least 500 acres. So it's just, we're talking size to land. Yes, sir.
I have a question. When you bring that power in, you're not bringing it right off a solar company. You're bringing that in AC, correct?
Correct. So
You're storing it DC, and then it goes back out AC again. So you've got some
Correct.
conversions in there
So those
from
things
AC
at
to
the end-
DC, from DC to AC.
It's a good question. So the little blocks at the end, those are inverters.
And our goal for this site is just to be standalone storage.
Yeah.
So we will not be co-locating this with wind or solar.
Yeah.
This battery will just be taking, again, some of that congestion away from the transmission lines and storing the electricity there.
So whose transmission line are you connecting to?
So that's whoever owns the substation. So the specific land we're targeting is that substation that's owned by
That's Gray River Energy.
Great River Energy.
Okay.
That's part of the.
And you're dealing with them now then?
Correct. So
Okay.
maybe, and feel free to just jump in, Carolina, but that's connected to the whole system called MISO. So here in Minnesota, it's called MISO North. And to connect to that system, basically to start such dialogue, you need to apply to interconnect to their system. The first requirement they have is you need site control. Without site, without land, you don't have a project. So essentially, we do want to start that dialogue with them, but we really can't until we get site control and a few other steps that also require us posting a lot of money and application fees, et cetera.
So you will be taking power off their line and putting it back on their line, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They will be able to use that battery at their disposal to adjust for whatever is needed to make sure the grid is balanced, essentially.
How many of those containers would you foresee using in your location that you're proposing here?
You know, so that final number will be really determined by the utility. We have an idea of what that number
Do you have a
looks like.
range? I mean, something you could
so
say?
I want to say maybe 2 to 3 times that, what you see on there. I think that's around 50 megawatts, 200.
1, 2, 3,
So
4, 5,
also batteries always like get better as the time progresses, so they become less dense.
I guess, go ahead,
Would-
Al.
sorry.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Would, is Otter Tail Power involved with this too?
Not yet.
I guess Otter Tail Power is the big one here in this city.
Right.
And why would you not have spoke to them first? Because if I'm looking at the map right, Otter Tail Power owns a strip of land in there, and it's all by this substation.
Yep.
You know, why would you not want to talk to them? Because that is a major employer in this city.
Right.
And, you know, we need to keep our local businesses. And where's the other one based out of? I don't even know.
Elk River, I believe.
Okay, so there we go. I guess I have a bit of an issue with that. I wish that Otter Tail Power, that you would have sought them out.
Right.
Because that's us.
Right.
So I guess I'm confused why you didn't do that.
Right. So
I was just gonna say, we really target the substation, and that's what we go after. When we do some of the transmission analysis, our transmission team says there's some capacity here for a battery project. And that's kind of what that gets dictated by.
correct. But let's say Otter Tail County did own that substation. We can go to them. They're not gonna pay any attention to us until they know, are you in the MISO interconnect queue?
Because
Any project, because MISO Otter Tail Power will likely be at the end who will benefit the most from such a project, because it's gonna be going on their grid. But they, because of the tariff and the way electricity works here, they have to go through MISO, and everything has to funnel through that essentially channel. So yeah, it is good to kind of have those relationships and like start that dialogue, but they're really saying you're just an idea until you don't get, you know, an interconnect application and a real project that we can guarantee that it's gonna be delivered. Then, you know, it's kind of pointless to start this conversation at such an early stage.
I think part of what Councilmember Kramer is saying is, I think if you ask the average person in Fergus Falls, they maybe don't even know Great River Energy has anything to do with Fergus Falls.
Exactly.
And so it feels like a decision was made to subvert dealing with Otter Tail Power, even though I understand from your guys' business perspective, I see what you're saying. But for our constituents, they have no idea that Great River Energy is even in play in Fergus Falls.
Exactly.
And so that's a concern, just from a transparency situation, I think. I totally understand what you're saying. My other question is, when you say that the end goal is to sell this off to the end user that will operate it for the 30-year life of the batteries, how many projects have you seen through to that sale process?
Quite a few. In Texas, actually, there's one already in construction.
Okay.
Energy works a little differently down there, where it's just going to be sold to the grid, and they call merchant.
Okay.
But yeah, Grid Store is a company backed by Goldman Sachs, and they're building out one in Galveston County that we actually developed.
I guess I have another question too. If I remember correctly, and tell me if I'm wrong, you were talking about there would be a cleanup. Let's say there's a cleanup after so many years, and you guys are responsible for that. Is that correct in saying? Okay, do you do basically an escrow account with a city to cover those costs in case you come up
Could be.
insolvent?
So in our standard form, there's language that says we must restore the land to how it was we started using it. Well, also in this case, I believe we have an LOI for purchase. So in this moment, the land would become the project's land itself. So, but in the case of a lease, because we do work with that, you do have language in there saying we're gonna restore it. Now, you can take a step further, and not an escrow account, but what we do a decommissioning bond, where you post that bond to say, you know, at year 20, or you post it maybe at year 10, to decommission the site if needed at year 20, et cetera. That's definitely something that can be done, but on a lease, not on a purchase, we would be the private landowner.
I wouldn't hold you to this, but is there cities that you've done this with?
Yeah.
As far as
Well, you know,
making sure there's money left? Because I have a good friend who is in the power business. He basically covers the grid of quite a bit of the United States. And he said, you know, that's one thing you really want to look at.
Yeah, I agree.
To make sure that we're not left with a disaster at the end of this.
Right.
And that's a
So,
major issue.
In the scenario where we do a purchase, which is what we do prefer, we still have to go through permitting. And this definitely falls within the city of Fergus Falls Authority. And so at that point, that is, the city would tell us, no, you need to put a decommissioning bond. And that's definitely that, you know, where we would follow up with that. And yeah, I've not exactly dealt with that where the city itself is the landlord, the landowner, But we have dealt with that when we get special use permits or any sort of rezoning where we add that decommissioning language.
How does the decommissioning work? What do you do with the units? Where do they go? And if it's 2 to 3, I think that's 9 or 10 units up there.
Sure.
If we're looking at 25 of these containers possibly here, let's just say, what is the cost of decommissioning and dealing with disposal and cleanup of
Yeah.
site of 25 units?
Right, so my experience in decommissioning comes from solar, which is almost even harder. So this will be a lot simpler, where I think the life expectancy of these things is about 20 years. That's what they get financed for. So I would say at year 10, you'd likely post decommissioning bond based on some sort of third-party study that says how much would this cost to clean up. I have seen that within that cost itself, there's going to be a lot of salvage value. I mean, these things itself are, there's metal, and the recycling of its own, it's almost pays for itself. That's what it was for solar. That was likely what it would be for here. And also, big picture, these things are very, very expensive. Upwards of maybe $150 million of just capex, which will also serve, as another taxing. It's going to be tax revenue for the city. But in general, at that point, it's not much to put another decommissioning bond to be able to get rid of it. So, but it is a risk that we take account for, and we're definitely happy to address it.
Battery-wise, how long do those batteries last?
So that's a good question. We're looking for a 4-hour battery right now.
No, I mean, how over time?
Oh, yeah.
Years.
I would say we finance everything for 20 years. So we're assuming the battery runs once a day, charges 4 hours, and dispatches 4 hours. So assuming a 365-day cycle annually, it's about 20 years.
How about if we go ahead and let you guys finish your presentation, and then we'll go through some more
Yeah, no,
questions
I mean,
at
I
the
think
end.
this is mostly it. Like,
Okay.
my objective here is to kind of let you guys know, we came in October and kind of introduced the idea, and we've been working with Claire. It's been great, but we're getting to that point where deadlines are real. And so, actually, do you want to just touch on MISO?
Absolutely. So as we were mentioning earlier, to submit an application with MISO, you have to show proof of site control. That is the very first step in this development process. And MISO's queue is currently open, but last week they approved a queue cap, meaning that there's projects entering the queue right now, and once that cap is met, they're not going to study anybody else this year. So anybody that enters the queue after that cap is met will probably be studied 1 to 2 years from that timeline. And again, the application, interconnection application you apply and they do a bunch of studies on your system. How is it going to affect other utilities? How is it affecting the transmission lines? And these things take a lot of time. So there is a little bit of, urgency on time, and I hate to rush a landowner into this because this is important. It is your land and it is an option to lease or purchase. Definitely don't want to rush you guys, but I do want to be transparent in that the queue is filling up. We like the site. We want to work with you all, and just hope that we can maybe come to an agreement or even share a long form with you all.
Yeah. So we don't know when this queue is going to completely fill up.
Yeah.
Factually, we know that when the queue opened 2 years ago, they received 120 gigawatts worth of requests. The queue cap is 65.
Yeah.
So meaning you don't get under that 65, sure you'll get in and you may get studied in 2 to 3 years. So we're already looking at a 4 to 5 year timeline. If that happens, add another best case 2 to 3 and it becomes less likely.
In my discussions with Otter Tail Power about how the MISO system works, they indicated that it's something like only 20% of the projects that are initially submitted even make it through. Does that track with your
That's correct.
understanding?
Yeah. And part of the reason for that is because as you get studied, MISO basically tells you, in order to connect here, you're going to have to pay $10 million in upgrades. And sometimes developers see that and they're like, well, we don't have $10 million. We can't do that. And they drop off the queue. So part of that, why you get 100 applicants and only 20 ever get built is because the
'Cause
process to connect to the grid is very
And
expensive.
developing is hard. Like
Yeah.
the site needs to be almost perfect. Like a lot of things could go wrong. You know, we can get up to permitting, and the city itself, we're not comfortable with this anymore. You don't get a permit.
You don't get a project. Correct.
So, you know, that's our job as developers to de-risk it and make it being that 20%. But yeah, you are correct. That is a very significant and correct figure.
Chairperson Laura, can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. A couple of my concerns are, this is a larger parcel of land that we would be tying up
You can go to the
in,
next slide.
in a contingency with you guys where you would end up optioning, if I'm understanding it correctly, probably only a couple of acres of the larger parcel. Is that correct?
Right. So right now, what we're looking at, the 150 megawatts, 100 megawatts, that's probably going to be roughly about 20 to 30 acres that the project will likely need.
Okay.
Right? However, we like to option something larger than that. I think we have 55 acres here, and that's mostly due, we don't know what it's going to look like when we study it. So the first thing we'll do is environmental studies, and things always come up. Title issues, some sort of species is found, that you got a setback, city requirements, etc. So option-wise, we like to option that much, but really we would only purchase or lease around that 20 to 30 figure, which we're okay including that into like the agreement. Say we got to take a minimum of at least X.
Would you guys, part of my concern is depending on where you take it, what we're left with could be something that's harder to develop in a way that's advantageous to our citizens and to growing our tax base.
Yeah.
And so would you guys ever consider just a straight out purchase of the whole thing and you deal with the redevelopment or the splitting of the land? So that's not a risk we're taking on for multiple years?
So the way I saw it and broke it down was kind of by parcels.
Okay.
So to kind of make it easier. So you see the two parcels highlighted, and also be clear, during the 5-year option, we're not building anything. We will go out and study it and walk the site and, you know, biologists do their thing, but we're physically not doing anything. Once we exercise and we buy that property, that means that project is getting built. And so maybe your question is at the end of that 20 years or whatever, then like we have to restore it kind of how it was, but it is also like at that point our property. But we would work with you, however, it's easier to break down apart, you know, the specific, but my original logic was, oh, there's two parcels here, that's kind of what makes the most sense to me.
I guess my concern about that was that you got that 55 acres, and then you take your 30 acres right out of the middle of it, and we got little pieces all the way around. And
That's what I was trying to get
Gotcha,
at too.
yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So it's a classic like donut hole that nobody wants to be donut hole.
Yeah.
So one thing would be, we want to be as close to that substation as possible. The further we are away, the more expensive it is to build these large wires to connect to that. So something we could put in the agreement and saying, sure, you got to take at a minimum of 15 acres, starting as from the substation going west, something like that. So yeah, so because we do not want to take something in the middle and, you know, have
That was my concern, that you take a piece out of the middle, and then we got the edges to try and deal with it.
I would even happy to say, you know, that first parcel number, say that's the one if you're gonna take anything, you have to buy that one first. And then if you want to buy part of the second one, it's kind of starts from the eastern edge of that property line going west.
So how does it work if you have a 5-year option on this and only 20% or whatever actually move forward? We're tying up this land with you guys for 5 years.
Correct.
I mean, I know there's money involved, but it's not huge amounts of money to tie it up for 5 years. I feel like we're in a situation, and nothing against your project, but I have hesitation of tying up that amount of land for 5 years, I guess, for
Right.
not a lot of return for the citizens.
Exactly, and that's totally valid, and we do encounter that a lot with private landowners. And whatever we send on that LOI is negotiable, and so, you know, that's our starting negotiation, and so this can definitely go back and forth. We tend to, option payments, we tend to be a little more sensitive to, but the final purchase price, that's definitely negotiable, and it has to be worth it. Like, you're putting your land aside for 5 years. You know, it's gotta be risk reward, and that's what we gotta make it worth it. So we try to reflect that in the current terms. If you feel like it's not and it could be better, definitely love to hear that feedback and, you know, be able to kind of move this thing forward with the right numbers.
I appreciate your attendance, very well presented. You were talking only the batteries. You're not talking the solar panels going on the liquor store.
Correct.
Okay. In your industry today, with our new administration, where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I mean, so we're obviously cognizant of.
I mean, it's your industry.
Changes happening, right? Yeah, batteries, you know, for some reason, for better, just kind of get forgotten about and don't really. They don't have a target on their back per se, as much as solar or wind does, because batteries itself, you're charging from the grid, and whatever's producing on that grid, which is a lot of fossil fuels, coal, natural gas. So you're supporting the whole system as a whole, and not being essentially, you know, oh, because of this one technology. And so, you know, we are cognizant of it, but again, also these things take so much time. And I mean, I've been in the industry for 8 years, and looking back, I was always like, oh, there's a new administration, what does this mean? And my bosses would always tell me, like, take a step back, like, our projects are fast, you know, these are fast. In the West, they're 5 to 7 years, maybe 10 years that they take to develop. So you're almost like at a macro level, not so much affected.
And I think the reality is that the demand for electricity is going to continue to rise. And again, like Nick was saying, these batteries, they can charge from any source of electricity. It doesn't have to be wind, it doesn't have to be solar. And we look at them more as just an addition to the grid to make it more reliable. You're not generating any energy from them. They're just helping kind of ease constraints here and there as they come.
Yes, I understand, you know, managing the grid, if you will. I don't sit in the command center, but I understand. There's two things that I see in regards to this physics. Let's go to the electric vehicle. It may not be as complicated to build the vehicle, and we may be saving green, but the actual production of the battery is more expensive and more detrimental. I'm not an environmentalist, more detrimental that way. And then to get rid of the battery is another issue. I'm more of a puritist, and I don't fit in a political game, and don't ask me why I'm sitting here. If you were to look at just the science, I don't think we're there yet. I mean, it costs too much to do the battery, it takes too much to get rid of the battery, and why don't we just put up more, nuclear plants?
Right. Yeah, and that's fair.
That's the green space that
That's
everybody's.
fair. But the reality is that battery prices have drastically decreased, and
Yes.
just keep finding more and more of the raw materials that are needed for these batteries. And so because of the low price of batteries, that's what makes this technology now competitive. And at the end of the day, you know, great thing about this country, it's a free market, and it's kind of it is.
I'm there.
Whichever energy is going to be able to supply and provide reliability, and batteries just compete on it. They don't really compete almost, because it's an addition to solar, wind, natural gas, and it's just something that utilities are demanding across really the country.
Well, I see the battery becoming more of a rubber band, taking the highs and lows out of this
Yeah,
demand.
I agree there. But
As a scientist, I'm not, but as a scientist, you look at it that way, and it doesn't work. You know, reality is reality. It's the hot button today. I appreciate you saying that Minnesota wants to be by 2040, 100%. It's going to be a struggle politically. I hope the industry catches up to what we want. So now to summarize and not get off my plateau, you're asking what tonight? We need to get into an agreement and start a negotiation.
Correct.
Lease or buy, the terms,
Yes.
and then you're out 2, 3, 4 years anyway.
Exactly. So as soon as we sign this LOI, which the LOI you guys have seen is non-binding, that's just commercial terms. We're on the same page. That allows us to go essentially use up our internal resources, draft up the binding agreement. Once we have that binding agreement, we go get everything else to submit the interconnect application to MISO and kick off really what likely would be a 2 to 3 year interconnect study process.
And in that meantime, lease or buy, we have the LOI signed and maybe an agreement signed. If you decline, we haven't changed anything, correct? I mean, if you don't get approved,
Oh, exactly. During this time.
the dirt's still there, the land's still there, we haven't
Exactly.
transaction, we haven't sold it, blah, blah, blah.
Fast forward 4 years from now, let's say MISO says absolutely not, or it's gonna cost you 50 million upgrades, the project is dead. We walk out, and
Yep.
then you keep your option payments, you keep your land, and there's nothing in that.
To clarify here, though, you're not, so we do the letter of intent, but on, pretty much on the heels of that, we would go into an actual binding agreement with you would be the way, not 5 years from now, there's a binding agreement.
No,
The
no,
binding agreement needs to happen
Yeah.
sooner than later.
The agreement is for the option to either purchase or lease.
Right, okay,
so
but that would happen probably in the next 6 months, kind of a thing.
The next 40, like you sign that, I'll have an agreement in 48 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we would end
For
up
y'all
in a
to review.
situation where we're looking at a legally binding agreement pretty quickly.
Correct.
Okay.
And until we do not have that legally binding agreement, we cannot submit the interconnect
Okay,
request.
that's the part, I think you guys might have been talking past each other a little. so-
And I would like to see that canned agreement that you have, because based on your conversations, you've indicated there's a lot of conversation. You know, this is your draft, and if we have special issues, special
Yeah.
requests, we can discuss it.
Yeah.
Personally, in my businesses, I've been down this thing with the electric car substations, and I negotiated too hard of a deal and they walked away, but that's okay.
So it won't be that hard to say.
The other thing about batteries too that we're not looking at, I don't think, is that batteries can be there if you have a hot day and all of a sudden you have a big demand on your grid. Your batteries can kick in to help that grid rather than having brownouts or blackouts or anything like that. The batteries kick in and help feed the grid for the extra power
That's
that's
exactly
needed.
what's happening in Texas
That's what started
right now.
it. That's what started this business down in Texas. You know, we actually had a winter storm, but for us it was in 2001, and people had blackouts. And ERCOT came and said there would have been batteries on the grid, we would able to mitigate this.
When you,
Mr. Cookman, did you have a question?
Yes, what is the cost savings or the cost per kilowatt or megawatt? Because, you know, what's your cost savings? And, you know, I understand for wind power and solar because it's charging not, but I guess I have a hard time comprehending your challenge. You know, if you have coal-fired or gas-powered or something like that, I mean, that's like an engine and a governor. I mean, you just crank it up. You don't need this expensive battery over here for that.
Right.
But, so where do you see the cost per kilowatt or what is your cost per power unit?
Yeah, I mean, on the exact numbers, definitely want to get back, but you almost have to think of it holistically, like it is just charging from, essentially, whenever there's excess energy on the grid that's not being needed, it's charging. And then all of a sudden, when there's energy demand, then it discharges. So it's not. And
What's the efficiency? Because you're going through.
it's almost 100%. It's almost like 97% because you're charging and you're discharging. You're not generating anything. You're not burning any coal. You're not burning any natural gas.
People across the borders and they're not cheap.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why I'll say the 97%. So you're gonna have losses every time you go AC to DC and you go back wang. But in general, you shouldn't have that much losses. You're just kind of like really storing that energy for a later use.
You can't just crank up a power plant and then crank it back down. That's not efficient.
Correct. Yeah. And these batteries have like jump start. That's another thing that they love.
Can I ask one question, Laura?
Yes.
When you say some city, like some of the things that fall through, like you've had cities or landowners that have backed out or changed their mind, things like that, because we're new to this, and not that, I mean, you probably don't want to give us worst case scenario, but when you've ran into people that have changed their minds, what are some of the reasons that they've had hesitation? Is it outreach from people, like adjoining property owners? Like, where have you run into situations, and what are the concerns that we should be aware that could pop up on our end?
So typically from landowners, there's really not, like once you sign like the agreement, we're both in for the next 5 years, right? Where we find pushback and challenges is on the permitting process. So the moment you know, we're gonna build this thing and requires a special use permit, which I believe Claire confirmed, And then all of a sudden, you have a lot of people here stating that they don't want that project, and then city council votes against. Like, you know, at that point, it's a discretionary permit. That's a discretionary vote. That's the fatal flaw. And then the reasons people don't want something is the typical answers is change is hard, and we don't want something. It's been green, and we want to look at green, and all of a sudden, I'm gonna have to look at destruction. I don't want to do that.
And I think the way that, sorry, Nick, that we try to navigate that is really getting out in the community and engaging with the community and informing and just educating. This is a new concept. So, you know, we are here today. We want to engage with you guys, and we want to be boots in the ground, right? We don't want to be a developer in Houston that has a project here and has never come here before. We want to be part of your community. We want to work with you. We understand that going through a special use permit, you know, we will be hearing from the public, right? So we want to make a presence in the community, and that's how we've navigated some of those challenges in other projects around the country before.
That's what has killed it. Other things that can kill it is MISO themselves telling you you can't build here or you're gonna cost you like an insane amount of money to be able to connect. That can be a project killer as well.
There's somebody back there.
Yes.
Thank you. It was just recently announced that the Ivanpah solar plant in California, which cost $2.2 billion to create, is being closed after 11 years because it is not cost effective. How would your batteries help to offset that?
California is interesting because at the time, they probably signed an agreement to sell power for a lot of money, and that power is worth less money now, and so therefore it was just smart for the bankrupt that, what they call power purchase agreement. But they're totally kind of unrelated. When you're gonna be in Minnesota, like this isn't connected to any solar farm whatsoever. It's independent of solar, wind, or gas, so not connected, but yeah, that has happened.
Do we have any?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Kwame.
As we think about what we might choose to do, just for the sake of laying it out there, my preference would be that we as a council consider doing it as a lease rather than a sale. You've indicated your preference would be a sale. I can see where that'd be a cleaner deal for you. For us, this is on the perimeter of what is pretty open for development property. It's not that we have any houses bumping against it today, but 20 years from now, if we're looking at growing out that way and we want to keep growing, this could be in the way. And if we had the option to then end the lease and keep going that way and clean the property up, that could be a real advantage to us that I think we might want to keep open as an option for the city.
I'll be upfront with you. Any option to lease agreement will not have termination rights from the lessor. So once we're in, that's at least for 20 years. The lease is minimum, and then there's 3 to 5 year extensions. And so let's say at year 10, you're like, I don't want the battery.
You'd still be in for 20 years,
Right.
but after that initial period, if we were looking
Correct.
to not extend, we could not extend.
Correct.
Right? So, frankly, I don't see us getting there
Yeah.
in 10 years. Stranger things have happened, but, that'd really be remarkable. But we could maybe be there in 20, or maybe we'd be there in 25, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so for the city, it seems to me that this isn't going to be a real moneymaker if we sell it. It could be something if we lease it, and that leaves our options open at the end. So that's just kind of where I see this going. If we were to make a deal with you, that I would prefer. Not that I'm not totally against the sale. I mean, if that's a good enough deal,
Yeah.
well, let's look at it. But wanted to make that point. As far as all the technical aspects of this and that, we're not scientists here. You guys can figure that out. But it's more about the rules and the process and making sure that we follow all of that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
When you speak about selling this project, you're not gonna own it anymore.
Correct.
So how do you take care of that lease? Do you transfer the lease to
Correct. So
whoever?
any
owns
sort
it?
of lease we sign will be under a project company that, what's the state rock of Minnesota?
The what?
Jen?
Excuse me?
The state rock of Minnesota? We name our projects, Balanced Rock
Explain
Power,
yourself.
and then the State Rock LLC. And so in Texas is Blue Topaz. So this one would be BRP, and whatever the State Rock of Minnesota is LLC. But yes, at that point, you sell that essentially project company that has all these agreements to it one of them would be the lease.
Lake Superior Agate.
Yep.
There you go. That's gonna be the name of the project. And that's what we would sell, to somebody who's gonna operate it for the next 10 years.
So when you're talking these numbers of years on the lease, you're not the owner at that time.
Correct.
Somebody else is
The,
gonna be
the contract itself, yeah, the project itself would be. And I'll just like add to, really, if you see that substation, this battery is essentially gonna be an extension of that substation. And so for future use, all these things are very valid, but during the special use permit, they can be addressed and saying, you need, if you're gonna build in the future, you're gonna have 25-foot setback or a 50-foot setback and put a vegetation buffer, 6 feet and some sort of fence line. All that can be done and it's gonna have to be done in the special use permit. And so this is just kind of like that first step that allows us to kind of get our ticket in the door and be in the game. And once we're in there, then this, when we really start playing and then start developing it. But definitely those are all valid concerns.
Any additional questions?
Just one other comment. It looks like you've probably got at least a couple, if not 3 other potential sites that you could go to around this. I mean, we don't surround that substation. There's sites to the east and to
Yeah.
the south. And if you were to not make a deal with us, you could possibly go to one of those other landowners.
That's correct.
So the question is, have you talked to those yet, or are they going to be your second
Talk to
choice?
Patricia. We did talk
Oh,
to
yeah,
the
actually, the
landowner.
original landowner we're talking to is to the west, to the
East.
To the east, yeah, sorry. To the east of the substation. But it was at the same time we started reaching out to you guys, and then once we talked with Clara, things are going well, so we definitely did not keep going with that pursuit. But I will be also transparent that there's other sites in the state we're at the same time pushing, because we're on the same deadlines. But yes, you're correct.
Any other?
Laura, one more question. Who is the final investor? Typically.
It would be whoever the final, the company, the buyer. So, for example, in that project that we built out in Texas, we sold to somebody that built out. It's a company called Gridstore, who's backed by Goldman Sachs. So I would argue the investor there is Goldman Sachs.
So it's huge international money.
Correct. I mean, to build these things is a lot of money that requires.
And obviously they get huge tax credits, and they're the ones that can play this game better than you and I.
Basically, but
Yeah.
at the project level, the project will be 100% it's taxes.
How do taxes work on something like this? Like what is the return on the city on something like this, and how is this assessed and all of that? Can you speak to that a little bit, or Clara or Bill? Like what is the impact to our bottom line if this were to get built in 6 years?
We can I can work on kind of giving you like a bag and napkin number, but typically I think this land would be ag right now, so it would have to be changed to industrial typically. And then industrial, I'm assuming, has your own rate where you get taxed at, and then it would be whatever the property value of it is that gets assessed times that rate, which, let's call it 150, maybe $200 million of property value, and then that gets.
So there's significant benefit to the tax.
Correct. It's very significant.
So this isn't looked at as, it's not like a camper parked out there and only the land is getting valued. The actual battery storage facilities are getting valued as a property value.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at.
Bill, can you answer though, if we lease that, what that'll do, that tax value, if it's still, can you explain to, if we do the lease, what that value of that tax will be on that, because it's still a city property?
If it's a lease, it should still apply the same, because I believe the assessor, values it based on the use, but whether it's owned by us or not. I go back to a number of years ago, the city owned the Chamber building, and at that time then, Chambers of Commerce became a taxable parcel, so even though it was in a city building that we owned, it became taxable.
Is the use.
Is that answering your question?
Yeah, well, it's different because it's city property, so that's the difference for me. So when I own a piece of property and I put something on it, it changes, but this is still a city entity that's that property. So there's got to be at least a rate difference.
I don't think so.
No, it's
primarily because it's Otter Tail County would evaluate the project and we lose the tax exempt status at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's what I'm looking at.
So, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
And that's
gonna
in
be
essence
taxed.
with
It's gonna
the
be taxed.
chamber building, it lost its tax exempt status.
Okay, yeah.
And since then, that's been transferred, demolished, and rebuilt. But
If,
Yeah.
if for some reason we don't go forward, which I don't know the will of the body, obviously, are the adjoining property owners that you've been in contact with, I don't know where the city-county line is, things like that, are they still in the city limits, the other property owners you've
Yes.
talked to? Okay. And so they would still have to go through the permitting process through the city as well? Okay.
In either case, we're gonna have to amend our ordinance.
Absolutely, we are. Yeah, that's where my head was going.
in regards to, there's no batteries within the.
Well,
No, we don't have.
We have a solar.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's, so what we've done in the past, when we get to places where maybe even solar's new, we'll come in and say, these are other solar battery ordinances that have been used in other cities, and kind of like guide you. Like Caroline said, like, once you sign an agreement, we're in, and then it's our job to work together to make this thing happen and, alleviate everyone's potential concerns and address, everything.
So if for some reason we were a no, you would most likely talk to the adjoining property owners?
Right, yeah, at this point, we were.
Try Patricia one more time.
Yeah, maybe, but we're in other parts of the state, other parts of the county that would just continue pushing this forward.
Okay, and not that that's where we're at, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are going to close this to our closed session. We're going to be reopening.
Thank you.
May I interrupt one time, Laura? I would like you to present what the next step is, or what the next step you would like. I mean, you can do that by email so that we can all see it.
I'll give you a quick 30-second, then I also follow via email. The next steps would be to sign such LOI. That either be a purchase or a lease. Or tell me which terms would allow you to sign that. Once that LOI is signed, I will give you the full binding document, and then essentially we start those
Plan,
lines
yeah.
going those back and forth. And so I can live in a world where you don't, if you're like, we don't know, we want to move straight to long form, but I need some sort of, agreement.
We gotta
saying
dance.
Yes, no, and exactly. So that's where we're at now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Appreciate your
you.
time.
I totally appreciate your opportunity of coming in time. Thank you very much.
It's nice.
I brought my snow boots.
You should have been here last week. It was 25 below.